Hello students, good morning. Welcome back to the English Year Learning Program. In this session, we are going to see the part 2 of the poem Confessions of a Born Spectator written by Ogden Nash. We know that this poem is taken place in the Unit 2 of your 11th English. In the part 1, we discussed the first 3 stanzas of the poem. At the end of that session, we came to know that the success of all those athletes and players would stimulate the poet's mind, and it would give a chance to him to swap his position with one of those players. And the poet said to us that the readers might think that after watching those continuous victories of athletes over the other athletes, the poet would become an athlete or any other sports persons. Did it happen so? That is to be discussed in this session. Come on, let's move to the class. The fourth stanza goes like this. Let me read this stanza. You can just follow me. Well, ego it might be pleased enough, but zealous athletes play so rough. They do not ever in their dealings consider one another's feelings. I am glad that when my struggle begins, twixt prudence and ego, prudence wins. In order to understand this stanza, we have to go back to the previous stanza, that is stanza number 3. There, the poet said to us that the success of all those players and sports persons would stimulate his ego, and thus it would give him a chance to swap his position with one of those players. With that concept, we have to understand this stanza. Come to this area. Look at the first line. He says that, well, ego it might be pleased enough. It refers to ego. It is in the passive construction. To understand this line, we have to change this passive into active. The active form of this line is, the success of athletes might please his ego enough. It means, the poet accepts that the success might please his ego, and his mind and his ego is stimulated already. But in the second line, he says that, but zealous athletes play so rough. Zealous means enthusiastic. He says that many enthusiastic and energetic athletes play so rough. Through these lines, what the poet wants to say to us is, though his ego might be pleased enough with success, he is not ready to swap his position with any of these players, because he says 2 reasons. The first reason is, the zealous, that is energetic and enthusiastic athletes are playing their games so rough. So the poet hates the playing of rough games, and at the same time, he is not against with any players. Right. The second reason lies in the following lines. Look at the third line. They do not ever in their dealings consider one another's feelings. They refers to the same zealous athletes. They do not ever in their dealings. Dealings means doing business. Here it means playing games. To understand these lines, we have to select the fourth line and place it between ever and in and get the meaning. Now read it. The players do not ever consider one another's feelings in their dealings. It means the players are not ready to consider the other players' feelings, because to win a game is a main goal of every player. Moreover, if they feel about their opponents, they may not win a game. First of all, they need not worry about the bad injuries of their opponents, and also they need not afraid of the strength of their opponents. However the opponent is, whether he is physically strong or weak, no one should concentrate on these. Thus, these 2 reasons affect the poet, and so the poet does not wish to become an athlete. Right. We can move to the next lines. I am glad that when my struggle begins, twixt prudence and ego, prudence wins. The term I refers to the poet Ogden Nash. He says he is glad when his struggle begins, Fixed, prudence and ego. The first term of the last line, fixed, is the old usage of English. It means between. Prudence means wisdom. You know the difference between wisdom and knowledge. You can gain knowledge when you read something, or when you listen to something, or when you see or watch something. Whereas you can gain wisdom by your own experience, especially when you are able to stand on your own leg. You can realize the importance of wisdom. Right, come to this area. He says he is happy when his struggle begins between his wisdom and ego. That means he gets the confusion whether he is to give importance to his ego or to give importance to his wisdom. You know, ego belongs to our brain, but wisdom belongs to our heart. That is why we call somebody an egoistic, as he or she is rude, arrogant and atrocity. At the same time, we call someone a kind-hearted, as he or she behaves kindly to all and helps all. If he gives importance to his ego, he would become an athlete and he would play a game rough, and he would injure his opponent and win a game, or he would get injured and lose a game. At the same time, if he gives preference to his wisdom, he would remain a spectator alone. Finally, his confusion gets clear. He gives importance to his wisdom, not to his ego. The result is his wisdom wins over his ego. That is why the poet is glad. Let us recall the fourth stanza now. As the poet's ego is pleased enough with the success of all those players, he might think that he would become an athlete. But when he watches the games playing so rough by the athletes, and the players do not consider about other players' feelings, he gives up his idea of changing his position, and so he does not wish to become any of the players. And at the end of this stanza, the poet is happy when his wisdom wins over his ego. Now, the poet is very clear that being a spectator alone gives him pleasure. The fifth stanza continues. It begins thus. When swollen eye meets gnawed fist, when snaps the knee and cracks the wrist, when officialdom demands, is there a doctor in the stands? My soul in true thanksgiving speaks for this modest of physics. Here, the poet watches a boxing match. There, he makes such observation. In the first line, he says, when swollen eye meets gnawed fist. Swollen eye means an eye which is already swollen as it gets a severe injury. And this swollen eye meets gnawed fist. Gnawed means strong and rough. Fist means a kind of gesture by closing all fingers and be ready to give a punch to his opponent like this. And in the second line he says, when snaps the knee and cracks the wrist. Snaps means breaks. This gnawed fist breaks the knee and it cracks the wrist. Again, cracks refers to breaks. It breaks the wrist. In the third line, he says, when officialdom demands. Officialdom, it means people who are the authority. This officialdom demands. Demands means calls. Is there a doctor in the stands? Stands means a sloping structure with rows where people sit or stand to watch a game. When these incidents happen, the officialdom, that is the referee of that boxing match, demands, that is calls for a doctor from the stands, because they want to give treatment to the badly injured people, especially the swollen eye and to the snapped knee and to the cracked wrist. Look at the next lines. My soul in true thanksgiving speaks for this modest of physics. Thanksgiving means showing one's gratitude. Modest means humble. Physics means body, that is the size and the shape of a person's body. See, the poet is moved by the injuries of those players, but he feels sad because those umpires, referees and other officialdom don't have such an emotional feeling. That is why he says these lines. Here, the poet wants to convey to us that he is wholeheartedly giving his thanks and showing his gratitude towards the God, for his body is humble. Here we can understand that the poet is not as strong as the sportsman, but he derives joy and he is satisfied about his big body. Let us recall the fifth stanza now. The poet watches a boxer hitting a swollen eye with his strong fist and breaking his opponent's knee and wrist. While it is happening, the officialdom calls for the doctors to give treatment for those badly injured people. This incident moves the poet and makes this observation. At the end of this stanza, the poet shows his gratitude towards the God as his body is modest and he is satisfied with his big body. Let us go to the last stanza of this poem. It begins thus: Athletes, I will drink to you, or eat with you, or anything except compete with you. Buy tickets worth their radium to watch you gamble in this stadium, and reassure myself anew that you are not me and I am not you. In this stanza, the poet calls the athletes and speaks these lines. In the first line, he calls the athletes and says to them that I will drink to you. Drink to somebody is a phrasal verb which means wishing somebody a good luck or wishing somebody a good health or showing a sign of success by lifting your glass and drink from it. In the second line, he says, or eat with you. You refers to the athletes. He says that he is ready to eat with the athletes. Whatever the dish may, the poet is willing to eat with the athletes. In the third line, he says, or anything except compete with you. That is, he says that he is ready to do anything except compete with you. Compete is the verb form of the noun competition, which means participate in games. In the next line, the poet says, buy tickets worth their radium. That is, he is ready to buy tickets worth their radium. Radium is the costliest metal in the world. It means he is ready to buy tickets though the price of the ticket is as costly as radium. And he continues in the next line, to watch you gamble in the stadium. Gamble means run or jump happily. He says that he is ready to buy tickets and he is ready to watch the athletes playing so happily in their stadium. You know, while playing, players are running or jumping happily in their stadium. That can be watched by the poet and it can be appreciated by the poet. In the last two lines, he says, and reassure myself anew that you are not me and I am not you. He says that he has to reassure himself anew. Anew means to do something again from the beginning. That is, he says that he has to reassure himself again that they are not, that is, the players are not like the poet and the poet is not like the players. Thus, the poet feels happy about himself and he is satisfied to remain as a spectator, which gives him a complete pleasure. Let us recall this stanza now. The poet calls the athletes and conveys a message to them that he will drink with them and he will eat with them and he can do anything with them except compete with them. and he can buy tickets by offering them even a radium and watch the players play so happily, and in the end he feels comforts that he is not an athlete or a player. He feels happy about being a spectator alone. Dear students, everybody is special and everybody is a hero is a common statement. It contains a general truth. All have some demerits, defects and shortcomings, but at the same time, all have some talent. A boy may not be a good student at school and he may fail in his exam, but he may be a good football player. A girl may not be a good student at school and she may not be a good sports person, but she may be a good girl at home. So, everybody has his own individual talent. Even disabled people can participate in drawing competitions and some other sports activities. So, everyone is special to everybody. This is the message conveyed in this poem. Dear students, thus we have ended our session successfully. I hope I have made you understand everything from this poem. You can raise your doubts anytime. Feel free to text me and call me. This is Nageswaran. Meet you in the next session. Until then, take care.